Okay, thank you. Good morning. Call this meeting to order. The subcommittee on from the Joint Ways and Means and Senate Finance, our subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. With that, committee secretary, will you please call roll?
Senator Brooks,
Here.
Senator Dennis,
Here.
Senator Gokachia,
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Here.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Here.
Assemblyman Watts,
Here.
and Chair Miller.
Here. And so we have on our agenda today, we will be doing some budget closings. And as we've seen the past few days, those documents still will need to be, well, we're going to take a pause because they still need to be loaded, give members an opportunity to print them. Also, while we take a quick pause, it'd be a great opportunity for anyone interested in making public comment at the end of the meeting to make sure that they're registered on Nellis through the agenda. So if we could take, it's 8:03 right now, let's take 7 minutes and plan on coming back at 8:10. That hopefully will give everyone enough time to print off those documents and be back and ready to go. So let's go ahead and recess until 8:10.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's good.
Chair, we are unmuted and ready to begin when you are.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So I will go ahead and call this meeting back into order. As stated before on our agenda, before we get to public comment, we do have a number of budget closings, and fiscal staff will walk us through that. So whenever you'd like to begin with the first budget, Ms. Morris, we're ready.
Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division. For the record, the first budget we have today is the Dcnr administration budget, which starts on page 3 of the closing documents. This budget provides support to the divisions, programs, boards, commissions, and councils within the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. There are 2 major closing issues in this budget. The first is the Sagebrush Conservation Credit System contract funding. The base budget includes $35,000 each year for conservation credit system contracts. Reductions of $35,000 each year for conservation credit system contracts when compared to the amount approved by the 31st special session. This reduction occurs in the base budget component rather than an enhancement decision unit, which makes it not transparent to the public and the legislature. The governor's recommended budget for the 21-23 biennium includes $85,000 in each fiscal year for the conservation credit system contracts, which is a $100,000 reduction compared to the $185,000 per year originally approved by the legislature for each of the last two biennia. This expenditure provides updates to the Conservation Credit System Manual and Nevada's Scientific Methods Document and Habitat Quantification Tool, which are used to determine the amount of conservation credits generated by a habitat improvement project or the amount of debits resulting from projects that negatively impact the sagebrush ecosystem. During the February 9th budget hearing, the agency testified that it no longer contracted with the U.S. Geological Survey through the Department of Wildlife because the Department of Wildlife's contract with the U.S. Geological Survey had expired. However, the agency anticipated contracting directly with the U.S. Geological Survey in the future. Budget Amendment A214994150, Decision Unit E252, recommends general funds of $94,680 each year of the 21-23 biennium to increase the conservation credit system contracts from $85,000 per year to $179,680 per year. The amendment would restore funding that was inappropriately removed from the base budget and would provide authority for the agency to contract with other vendors such as the U.S. Geological Survey in the upcoming biennium. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of Budget Amendment A214994150 for additional general funds of $94,680 in each year of the 2021-23 biennium, providing $179,680 per year for sagebrush conservation credit system contracts?
Okay, I will entertain a motion on this recommendation.
Senator Dennis, I would move to recommend approval of Budget Amendment A214994150 for additional general funds of $94,680 in each year of the 21-23 biennium, providing $179,680 per year for sagebrush conservation credit system contracts.
I will second that.
I will second.
Okay, and it's,
Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe-Moreno. I'm sorry.
thank you for that second. Okay, and with that, is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gobuchia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes?
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
and Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. Can we move on to the next? Ms. Morris, move us to the next budget, please.
The second major issue on this budget is on page 5 of the closing packet. It is a budget amendment submitted for a new personnel officer position. Through this budget amendment, the governor recommends a new E251 decision unit, including federal U.S. Department of Energy grant funding transferred in from the Division of Environmental Protection Administration budget of $140,507 in FY 2022 and $134,425 in FY 2023, for a total of $274,932 over the 2021-23 biennium to support a new Personnel Officer 2 position and associated travel, equipment, and operating costs. During the budget hearing on February 9th, the agency indicated it had secured a federal grant that would provide funding for a new personnel officer to position and anticipated a budget amendment would be submitted. The department does not currently have a personnel officer to provide department-wide consistency and professional advice based on expertise. The Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is currently authorized for 929.5 full-time equivalent and seasonal positions. Comparable sized agencies looking at position counts have between 1 and 3 personnel officers, as shown on the chart on the top of page 6. For instance, in the Division of Child and Family Services, which is authorized for 1,045.16 full-time equivalent positions as 1 personnel officer. The agency indicates the deputy director currently spends half of its time on personnel-related matters, and 100% of the position's time would be spent on personnel-related matters if this position did not have other duties. This impacts the deputy director's ability to manage the agency's divisions, programs, boards, commissions, and coordination with other state agencies and federal partners. The agency does have 3 personnel analysts and 2 personnel technicians within the divisions of environmental protection, forestry, and state parks that support personnel functions within those divisions. And fiscal staff handles daily personnel functions for other agencies within the department. The new personnel officer would provide guidance and updates to personnel analysts and technicians and ensure consistency across the department and inform the director of any personnel actions that could be of concern and require support from the Office of the Attorney General. For the funding of this position, the governor recommends transfers of federal U.S. Department of Energy grant funds from the Division of Environmental Protection. This grant is administered by the Division of Environmental Protection and allocated to agencies within the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to support direct and indirect costs associated with state environmental management activities. Over the 5-year grant, the agency anticipates receiving $16.3 million, which is most of which is included in the base budget as the governor recommends. The Department of Energy has communicated that it would be appropriate to fund the new position using the grant because although the position is not directly related to environmental management activities, the addition of the position would contribute to better recruitment and handling of personnel issues within the DCNR. Other positions in this budget that provide department-wide support are funded through general funds and cost allocation reimbursements. If federal funding is not available in the future, the agency indicates it would request to fund the position through cost allocation reimbursements and general fund appropriations similar to other positions in this budget. Fiscal staff notes that the budget amendment recommends the position start July 1st, 2021, rather than the typical October 1st start date for new positions. The agency has indicated it would be reasonable to start the position on October 1st, 2021. In addition, the budget amendment includes unsupported costs of $29,125 in fiscal year 2022 and $26,253 in fiscal year 23. The chart on page 7 shows the recommended technical adjustments to this position to adjust for the start date and removing unsupported costs and updating the furniture quote based on an updated quote received by the agency, which would reduce the funding by $54,286 in fiscal year 2022 and $26,253 in fiscal year 23. Additionally, fiscal staff notes a technical adjustment would be needed to align the transfers in the Division of Environmental Protection Administration budget. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of budget amendment A214444150 to add one personnel officer position with the noted technical adjustments, funded with federal funds transferred in from the Division of Environmental Protection Administration budget of $194,393 over the 2021-23 biennium.
Okay, thank you for that. First, members, are there any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions, I will entertain a motion on this recommendation.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Senator Dennis, I would move to recommend approval of budget amendment A214444150 to add one personnel officer position with the noted technical adjustments, funded with federal funds transferred in from the Division of Environmental Protection Administration budget of $194,393 over the 21-23 biennium.
okay, we have a motion by Senator Dennis. Do I have a second?
I will second it. This is Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe Moreno.
Okay, and we have a second. With that, can we please have a roll call vote? Or I should ask, any further discussion before we take a vote? All right, please take the roll call vote.
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gokachia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. Please let's move on to the next budget.
There are two other closing items in this budget as shown on the chart on the bottom of page 7, which appear reasonable to fiscal staff. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay. So with that, members, are there any questions? Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, it's now, I couldn't see for a second. I think Assemblywoman Titus.
I have no comments on this one. It's the next budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Senator Dennis?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to that we move to recommend other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will second it. This is Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe Moreno.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Okay, if committee staff would please take the roll call vote.
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gokachia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. Please move us to our next item, please.
The next budget, Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division. The next budget starts on page 9 of the closing packet. It is the Conservation Districts Program. The Conservation Districts Program works with Nevada's 28 locally elected conservation districts in a statewide conservation program. There is one major closing issue in this budget, which is a reduction in conservation district and sage grouse grants in decision unit E680. The governor recommends reducing annual grants to the state's 28 conservation districts by $1,000 per district per year, and sage grouse competitive grants by $50,000 per year from the amounts recommended in the base budget for general fund savings totaling $156,000 over the biennium. The sage grouse competitive grants aid conservation districts in funding ground-ready projects to benefit sage grouse habitat. The 2019 legislature approved $75,000 in each year of the 2019-21 biennium for sage grouse competitive grants, and in FY 2020, the grants were reduced to $65,000 as a budget reduction measure, and FY 2021 grants were eliminated pursuant to Assembly Bill 3 of the 31st special session. For the 2021-23 biennium, the governor's net recommendation would restore the grants at $15,000 per year. According to the agency, one of the benefits of the competitive grant program is the matching funds. Matching funds are not required to apply for a grant. However, in 2020, matching funds provided $2.86 for each grant dollar awarded. For the conservation district grants, the 2019 legislature approved conservation district grants of $5,000 per district per year for the 2019-2021 biennium. And the 31st special session approved reducing 2021 grants by $1,000 per district per year from $5,000 to $4,000. The governor's recommendation would continue funding at the $4,000 per district per year level as approved by the 31st special session. Regarding the annual conservation district grants, the agency indicates the grants are utilized to pay staff and cover operating expenses. In FY 2020, the conservation district received a total of $270,025 from counties for cooperation on conservation projects. And the agency indicated that the districts independently seek grants beyond the sage grouse competitive grants offered by the department. And the agency further indicated the return could be as high as 3-to-1 on grant funding when conservation districts were involved with multiple partners. And in-kind matches of volunteer time and money were rarely calculated. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reducing annual grants to the state's 28 conservation districts by $1,000 per year and reducing sage grouse competitive grants by $50,000 per year for general fund savings of $156,000 over the 2021-23 biennium?
Members, excuse me, members, do we have any questions? Dr. Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to mostly make a comment. I can't accept this reduction. I have big concerns about the impact on these conservation districts. They operate on such a small budget as it is. And even during the hearing, as noted in our documents, that the reduction would definitely impact their ability to support sage grouse related projects and other projects carried out by conservation districts, and thereby reducing conservation work in the state. We've heard testimony on many different committees, many different bills about how important it is the conservation work in our state. We also have heard multiple times about how fire has destroyed the habitat for our sage grouse and all the work that's gone in to restore habitat. The 28 conservation districts in our state are boots on the ground, local volunteers, projects that are out there doing really good work for the state. And although this is a simple, a couple $1,000s to each district as it would pan out, the impact on the 3-to-1 match for federal funds, I think is just really myopic of us to save a very small amount of money compared to what we're going to be losing, and the impact on for the conservation district. So I'm very, I cannot support this reduction.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Senator Gokachia?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate
the opportunity to comment on that. I agree. I with Assemblywoman Titus, it could probably stand $1,000 reduction per district a lot easier than the $50,000 per year cut in competitive grants. Again, at a 3-to-1 return, I don't see, and the sage grouse issue clearly hasn't gone away. And with the enhancement of the sage grouse habitat also comes a certain amount of level of reduction, especially pinyon juniper and our wildland fire threats. So we're going to pay at one place or the other. Maybe this 50,000 is cheaper than 5 million in fighting forest fire. So I would hope we can restore this at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions or comments? Senator Dennis?
Thank you. My question would have to do, I mean, so we're looking at reducing it from the 5,000 to 4,000 and then the competitive grant. One of the suggestions in here was that they apply for grants. Do we know, I can't remember from the hearing, and maybe staff can tell us if they've been successful in getting any of those additional grants.
Ms. Kaufman, can you respond to that, please?
Madam Chair, I would ask Ms. Morris if she can answer that question.
Ms. Morris?
Nancy Morris for the record. The agency did indicate that the conservation districts do apply for and receive grants beyond the sage grouse competitive grant. However, the funding is not tracked within this specific budget.
My follow-up question was going to be if they had, because there's been other cuts that we've done over the last biennium or two, if any of the projects that they were doing had been delayed because they haven't gotten the funding because we did the cuts.
Do we have a response to that, or was that a comment, Senator Dennis?
No, it was a question.
It is a question? Okay.
Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division. I do not have that detail about impacts potentially from delayed projects.
Okay, thank you. And then do we know if there's any federal funds coming that would be available to help fill that gap for this next biennium as far as the recovery stuff?
Madam Chair, if I may respond, again, I think we don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is $100,000 over the 2 years, and this is match money. Again, that's really what makes it so key. Yes, there are federal dollars out there, but typically we need to match them, or the conservation district needs to match them, and that's what's creating the void.
Right. We also have DCNR on if anyone would like to respond to the question.
Thank you. Deputy Director Dominic Etchegoyen with the Nevada Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I believe the question is if there is any federal funding available to make up for the sage-grouse grants that we aren't able to provide. And I can't say that we can make up and fill this hole, but there is always federal funding and other funding sources that our conservation districts are competing for every year, and they do their best to take advantage of those funds and take advantage of those projects. An example would be currently there are beaver dam analog projects up in northern Nevada, north of Winnemucca. We've been successful at competing for those grants. But like I said, those don't replace these dollars. Those are grants that they will always compete for and do the best that they can. So I can't say that we're filling that hole necessarily.
Any Assemblywoman Tolles?
Much, Chair. And I just want to point out, I know in our notes there was Nothing specifically about delayed projects, but there was a note from the agency that this impact this cut could have an impact on the ability to conduct public meetings virtually, and also that in response to some of the questions from the hearing on February 9th, that the agency tried to identify if there was other ways to make up for this gap through fees, and they were not able to identify any other way to make up for this gap for fees. And I would also just note what Senator Gokachia pointed out, that the return could be as high as 3-to-1 in terms of what we're leaving on the table for these cuts and the matching funds available. So for those reasons also, I'm going to vote against this recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe I saw Senator Gokachia with his hand up again.
I was just going to ask a question of Deputy Director Echegoyen, but in listening to Ms. Toll's remarks, I forgot my question. I'm sorry.
Okay. And Senator Dennis.
Oh, I think you have Senator Brooks, since I already asked it. Let him go
Oh,
first.
okay, Senator Brooks. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair Miller. So in this decision unit, there's also, it's not part of this particular decision on the funding, but it is affecting the operations of conservation grants and the work that they're doing. There's a position held open, a reduction of a position here. So I just want to ask DCNR, if that position were to be filled, and that's decision unit E681, if that decision were to be filled, would the agency be able to do more work, be more effective in conservation district and sage grouse grants management and implementation?
Thank you for the question. Deputy Director Dominique Echegoyen with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Yes, we obviously could do more if that position were funded. Strategically, that was a cut that we made to meet our budget reductions. It has and will continue to have an impact. Our conservation district program works to support all of those individual 28 conservation locally led districts throughout the state to ensure that they have the technical assistance that they need. We provide them other financial assistance as well. And it does have an impact, in having that position vacant and will be a challenge. We do have one of our resource staff specialists who has stepped up and started to take on that role. She has done excellent. I am providing some time myself to help provide that technical assistance, but it's challenging and it will have an impact. And if we had that position filled, we could get more grants. I think on the ground, we could apply for more grants, make sure that we compete for them statewide, and we could do better as a program.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. And I believe that, Senator Dennis?
Thank you. I was just going to ask staff, so if we didn't want to accept this, would the motion just be to not accept, and then we wouldn't do the cut, the $1,000 one, or could we maybe leave the $1,000 per conservation and then keep the competitive grant?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Dennis, yes, you can do either of those two options. You can choose to not approve, or you can choose to do an alternative. That is a choice that the subcommittee can make at this time.
I'll take a motion.
Madam Chair, I would be willing to get a little bit of savings, I guess, if we don't do the 1,000, but put the competitive grant money back in. I don't know if that's let's see. I don't know what I guess the motion would be to not recommend approval of reducing the annual grants to the state's 28 conservation districts. Well, let's see. Let me look at that for a second. I guess to recommend approval of reducing the annual grants to the 28 conservation by $1,000 per year, and not reducing the sage grouse competitive grants by $50,000 per year for the general fund. And I don't know what the savings would be, but over the 21-23 biennium.
Okay, do I have a second? Second by Senator Gokachia. Thank you. Okay, any further discussion?
Madam Chair, if I could, please.
Yes, please, Senator.
Okay, so I can support that. We have to understand that probably 2 sessions ago, we went from 3 to the 5. So, ultimately the conservation districts are still a little bit ahead at receiving $4,000 a year. And I do believe that, again, as Senator Dennis stated, the match component is a critical piece of this. Thank you. And that would be a $56,000 a year savings is what it is, $1,000 for each of the 28 districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Dennis?
I also just wanted to point out the discussion that in the question that Senator Brooks brought up. I think, with getting that, if they get that position back, that also will give them the opportunity to apply for some additional grants if they have that person back. So I feel good about the motion and I support it. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And we're all trying to work to get to, where we can be, and we all appreciate the, the need for funds and that these are some smaller funded programs. So I'm glad we could get there together as a group. So with that, committee staff, can we please have a roll call vote?
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gopachia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. So we are ready to move on. Thank you, everyone.
Chair Miller, I have a question before we move to the next budget.
Yes, Senator?
So my question is on the additional items that we have in this budget, the decision unit E681, the elimination of a position or holding open of a position. So yesterday, when we made a decision for the purposes of efficiency and moving through budgets, members expressed great concern over their lack of ability to be able to weigh in on individual budgets and decisions. Now is the time. So do the members who were so concerned yesterday about process, are they concerned today about decision unit E681? And this is the time. Do we want to remove that position and not bring that position back? Is that something that the members of this committee want to do? And do they want to make those recommendations? So were we okay with actually bringing back some of these folks?
Well, I haven't had any members reach out to me about that specific concern, Senator. So if there is a member that has a concern, would you identify yourself, please?
So if I might, Madam Chair?
Yes, Assemblywoman?
Thank you. And I appreciate the comments, Senator Brooks, regarding the keeping the position open. I think we would all support filling this position if indeed we had the funds approved and ability, which is why it's important that we keep the position open and that we don't eliminate that. As we all heard yesterday, there will be opportunities to, if we have those funds in, this is one of the ones that certainly could be filled at the time when that becomes available. And that indeed is why the agency, I would assume, is keeping this position open. It's been open vacant from October 21st to the 22nd, which does allow us in October at some other time to fill this position. So none of this is finite. All of this is moving parts as we are all aware. And one of the wonderful things that our legislative body does allow for is to take another look at this as funds become available. So I don't think that it's a all or none decision we're making today. I think this decision is consistent with what we spoke towards yesterday, with opportunity always to fill these as monies become available. But I appreciate your pointing it out. This is exactly one of those positions.
Okay, thank Senator Gopachia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a brief comment on that. Yes, I agree with Assemblywoman Titus and appreciate Senator Brooks's question. Clearly, but in my mind, the question is, I would rather maintain this position vacant And again, take the previous and support the previous action. Clearly, this is a vacant position. Is it needed? Yes, clearly down the road if we have funding available. But again, in my mind, we're trying to close this budget out with existing revenues that we have in place. And so with that, I would say it has to be maintained as a vacant position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we will move on to the budget, please.
Chair Miller, we just took a motion to close this budget without the GovRec adding money in that we haven't yet identified. So that's kind of if we can't have it both ways. So we've either going to do GovRec or we're making decisions. And so I just so we're okay with holding this position vacant, but we're also okay with not making the recommendations to cut the funding to some programs. It's we can't have it both ways. And so I support the recommendation, and I also support the actions to restore this position to the agency. And so while that's not a decision that we're making today, we're going to look at that later. I just want it to be crystal clear that we have the ability to have these conversations, and nothing we did yesterday limits that ability, regardless of how it was portrayed. So rant over.
Thank you. Senator Dennis.
Thank you. And I think this is just what we were just talking about. But, in the decision that we just made to not cut, obviously at some point, in order to make it balanced, we're going to have to, cut something else that we might. So as we go through this process, but I appreciate the discussion. It's important for us to keep in mind as we do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now let's move on to our next items.
Nancy Morris, Fiscal Analysis Division. The next budget begins on page 13 of the closing packet. It is the Office of State Historic Preservation. The State Historic Preservation Office encourages the preservation, documentation, and use of cultural resources through the state and federal programs. There is one major closing issue in this budget, which is a budget reduction. Decision Unit E680 is a recommendation to achieve general fund savings of $37,827 in each year of the 2021-23 biennium by replacing general funds with Historic Preservation Fund grant funds and Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation Grant Program bond proceeds. The Historic Preservation Fund grant is utilized by the agency to support personnel costs, operating expenses, including grant-related expenditures and cost allocations. The grant requires a 40% match, and the recommended funding source change would align the agency's rent expense with the 40% general fund, 60% federal fund split. The bond proceeds would support the cost of the agency's Carson City vehicle. Pursuant to NRS 383-530, general obligation bonds of up to $3 million per year to fund historic preservation projects may be issued, and up to 5% of the bond proceeds may be expended for administrative costs to support the Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation. The governor recommends issuing $4 million in bonds in the upcoming biennium, which would allow for up to $200,000 in administrative costs. Fiscal staff notes the recommended cost of the vehicle is $5,732 per year, compared to the recommended bond revenue of $6,377 per year. Fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to align the bond revenue with the cost of the vehicle if the subcommittee wishes to approve the recommendation. During the budget hearing, the agency indicated that as staff for the Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation, the vehicle would be used predominantly for commission business. In response to follow-up questions, the agency indicated 90% of the vehicle's use would be for commission support and 10% of the vehicle's use would be related to reviewing federal infrastructure projects and state and national register program purposes. To align the funding with the agency's planned use of the vehicle, fiscal staff recommends funding 90% of the vehicle cost with bond proceeds and 10% with historic preservation grant funds and general funds based on the required 40% match, as well as the previously noted technical adjustment to align the funding with the cost of the vehicle. These adjustments are shown in the chart on page 15. With the technical adjustments, this decision unit would be a general fund savings of $36,953 each year of the biennium, an increase of federal funds of $31,794, and bond proceeds of $5,159 each year. Also during the budget hearing, the agency testified that federal historic preservation grant funds were anticipated to be higher than the amount recommended in the executive budget. The agency indicated it anticipates grant funds of $874,470 in each year of the upcoming biennium, which is an increase of 5.3% compared to the $830,499 each year in the governor's recommended budget. The agency subsequently identified this was an estimate provided by the National Park Service, and until the grant is awarded, the amount is not final. The agency does not have the final award, and it could be as much as a year before it receives the final award notification from the federal government. To provide the match for the grant, the agency uses Nevada Cultural Resource Information System database access fees and general funds. During the budget hearing, the agency indicated it could raise the subscription fees. However, pursuant to Chapter 239 of NRS, the fees related to public records related requests can only be increased when the actual costs of providing records increases, and therefore the agency cannot raise fees solely to provide more matching funds for the grant. Based on the level of general funds and Nevada Cultural Resource Information System fees projected in the governor's recommended budget with the previously noted technical adjustments and the projected increase in grant funding, the agency would be $16,433 below the required match of $524,710 and would be unable to draw down the entire projected grant amount of $874,470 in fiscal year 2022. However, the agency would have sufficient match funding available to draw the full projected grant in fiscal year 2023. The maximum grant the agency could draw in fiscal year 2022, based on the governor's recommended level of general funds with the noted technical adjustments and projected subscription fees, is $847,086, which is $27,384 less than the projected available grant of $874,470. To provide sufficient authority for the agency to utilize the full projected grant award of $874,470 in each year of the upcoming biennium, the subcommittee may wish to consider approval of increasing the total general funds in this budget in fiscal year 2022 from the governor's recommended with technical adjustments $428,777 in fiscal year 2022 to $445,210, which is a $16,433 increase in fiscal year 2022 to provide required matching funds, and increasing historic preservation fund grants from $830,843 per year to $874,470 per year, which is a $43,627 increase based on the agency's projected grant award, with a corresponding increase of $60,060 in fiscal year 2022 and $43,627 in fiscal year 2023 in the Historic Preservation Fund grant category to support costs related to the federal program areas, including review and compliance of projects, National Register activities, and surveying cultural resources. The table on page 16 summarizes the closing options for this budget, including option A, which would be to approve decision unit E680 with the noted technical adjustments, which would result in a general fund savings of $36,953 each year of the upcoming biennium, federal funds increase of $31,794 each year, and utilizing bond proceeds of $5,159 in each year. Or option B, which would be to approve the decision unit E680 with the noted technical adjustments, as well as approving additional general funds in fiscal year 2022 and federal funds in both years of the biennium, with the fiscal year 2022 general fund increase of $16,433 and the federal fund increase of $43,627 in each year of the biennium, which would result in a net general fund savings of $20,520 in fiscal year 2022, federal funds increase of $75,421 in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, and bond proceeds of $5,159 in each year of the biennium. Or option C, which is to not approve decision unit E680. So there would resulting in no general fund savings of the $37,827 in fiscal year 2022 and 23. And it would reduce the federal funds by $31,450 in fiscal year 2022 and bond proceeds of $6,377 in each fiscal year. The options for the subcommittee are laid out on the top of page 17. Option A is to approve decision unit E680 as recommended by the governor with the noted technical adjustments to replace general funds of $36,953 each year of the 2021-2023 biennium with Federal Historic Preservation Fund grant funds of $31,794 and Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation Grant Program bond proceeds of $5,159 each year. Option B, approve decision unit E680 as recommended by the governor with the noted technical adjustments to replace general funds of $36,953 each year of the 21-23 biennium with Federal Historic Preservation Fund grant funds of $31,794 and Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation Grant Program bond proceeds of $5,159 each year, and approve additional general funds of $16,433 in fiscal year 2022 and Federal Historic Preservation Fund grant funds of $43,627 in fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, with corresponding increases to the Historic Preservation Fund grant category to align with the agency's projected federal grants in the upcoming biennium. Or option C, do not approve the governor's recommendation to replace general funds with federal funds and bond proceeds and restore general funds of $37,827 in each year of the 2021-23 biennium.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Gocochea?
Madam Chair, and I guess I don't see it in the document, but when we've got the federal dollars that are projected, we assume that'll be an October 1 grant?
Ms. Morris?
The agency indicates that the grant year does start October 1. However, due to delays that it has recently experienced, it would expect the award to come after the October 1 date.
Madam Chair, if I could follow up then, I guess this is going to be a different year considering we're going to have the guidelines in place in October 1. And I would think in this one, we would probably be better with, approving option A and dealing with the $16,433 through IFC, which would be, I think the process we're going to be dealing with, especially if this grant award might not be coming until October. Clearly IFC could deal with it at that point. $16,000 is not a big lift for IFC. And that way we'd be sure we covered the bases.
Okay, thank you. I also saw Senator Dennis.
So I would have a question. If we did that, what Senator Gokatia is to staff, that would just mean that we would, how would that, I mean, I guess what would the motion would just be that A, but how would that look as far as procedurally? We would just not do it and then hope that that IFC would then put in the 16,000 so that we could get that additional federal grant money?
Madam Chair, for the record, Sarah Kaufman, yes, that's correct. So the committee would then approve item A, and then at a later date, the agency would come back to the interim finance committee and seek an appropriation through the IFC contingency account for those matching funds.
So I have a question as well. However, if we were to move with option B, then we're already approving the additional funds in there right now. So there would be no need to come back to IFC then later on. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that would be correct.
Okay. So then essentially, then option B would be a more robust right now way to fulfill it. Ms. Kaufman?
If item B is selected, then the general fund appropriations would be provided into the agency's budget and would be provided beginning for the current or the fiscal year 2022.
Okay. Assemblywoman Tolles?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I appreciate having these two conversations back to back because the last one was really about a much larger return on investment match. This one, although there is a match involved, seems to be much smaller, where we've got the $16,000 that is on the table that we're trying to decide, which then results in the corresponding match of got my numbers all correct here, the 27,384. So it's not quite that same level of ratio that we were talking about in the last discussion. But like the last discussion, if we veer from the GovRec of the cut of the 16,000, we're going to have to go find that somewhere else, correct? Whereas the option that we have on the table is if we choose option A today, it still gives us the chance in IFC when maybe we have a better fiscal situation to be able to approve it then, taking advantage of that federal match. Am I tracking?
I'm going to let Ms. Kaufman confirm or clarify that.
Madam Chair, that is correct. So if the appropriations are not provided for, the additional 16,000 is not provided for today, the agency could seek at a later date IFC contingency account funds during the 2021-23 biennium.
So in this case, I'd be more comfortable sticking with A, the current governor recommendation, but I'm certainly still listening to the dialogue and the other colleagues on this committee, and that's where I'm leaning.
Okay, Senator Dennis?
So I just want to clarify, it's 16,000, but we're going to get back 87,000, right? Over the 2 years. Is that with the 16,000 match? Because what I just thought I heard someone told say is we'd only get the 43, but I think we get it in both years by doing the match. Is that correct?
Ms. Kaufman?
The agency currently has enough matching funds in their budget in fiscal year 23 to be able to utilize the full federal grant. It's just fiscal year 2022 that would require the increase in general funds in order to provide sufficient match to utilize the full federal grant.
Okay.
Okay, so Ms. Morris, we're only making that 16,433. That would just be in 2022. We would not need to do that in 2023. And yet we would still receive, okay, the federal funds in both years. Is that correct?
Correct. The decision is to add the additional general funds in fiscal year 2022 to allow the agency to add the general funds in fiscal year 2022, as well as the authorization for the federal funds to provide the full match authority in fiscal year 2022. And additionally included in the motion is to increase the authority for the grant in fiscal year 2023. Given that the agency has sufficient general funds already in fiscal year 2023, no additional general funds would be required in fiscal year 2023.
Senator Dennis?
So based on the discussion earlier, what Senator Gokachia was talking about, that they're not going to, the grant wouldn't be till October anyways. I probably would be okay if we had them go to IFC, because if we do it now, we're going to approve it now. And I guess they could, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe we need to ask the agency, but if that would make a difference, if putting it off 3 months versus whatever. But, you know, I think generally I would be okay with having them come to IFC, and that would allow us to get some savings in the budget net today.
But I also want to recall something else that was stated. It wasn't a guarantee that it would be October 1st. It was just that those funds would be available after October 1st. So there's a difference between October 1st and after October 1st. So I think that's something we should consider as well.
Right. And I don't know if we want to, I'm sure we could probably ask the agency to see if they have a preference. Or at
Sure,
least
let's go ahead and do that if someone's here to respond. Ms. Palmer, are you?
Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Palmer. I'm the administrator for the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Senator Dennis, would you restate your question, please?
Right. So, yeah, Mike, so you've heard our little bit of discussion here. My question would be, is there a difference between if we wait and have you come to IFC to ask for that 60,000 versus just approving it today? Is there, on your side, does that change any of your ability to get the work done that you're trying to do?
For the record, my name is Rebecca Palmer. The answer to the question is I will have to end up at IFC as soon as the close of this budget.
So you're saying you would need it now in order to be able to apply for the federal funds. Is that correct?
For the record, this is Rebecca Palmer. We have a grant agreement that we need to sign in the next 2 months, and that grant agreement requires a match larger than my current appropriation. So yes, I will be at IFC probably as soon as we can file the paperwork.
So thank you. So Madam Chair, I guess I would ask our staff, she's saying she would need to do it within 2 months. That's even before we've finished our budgets, I think. So does that mean she's going to end up going to IFC before we finish the budgets?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Dennis, the IFC contingency account is not accessible during the legislative period. And so those funds would only be available beginning in perhaps the June IFC meeting.
So I guess that would be my question. If she's having to apply within the next 2 months, then does it really make sense for us to do it in the budget? Or should we to do it in the budget that's not going to be available till June till July? I guess the budget, if we approve it, it would be in July versus her going to IFC in June and being able to get it sooner. And then we wouldn't have to approve that 16,000 now. And we could just go with A and have her get it for June. Does that make sense? Ms. Kaufman?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Dennis. The June IFC has not yet been scheduled. However, they typically are later in June. So the agency, if this IFC approved, could provide it in June. However, if the appropriation is approved through item B, that funding would then be available to them beginning July 1.
Okay. So Madam Chair, it looks like either way, they can either get it in June IFC, which would be at the end of June, or get it in July. If we can get some savings in the budget, then I guess I would recommend going with A, because we get a little bit of savings. They still would get the money in the time. They're only getting the soonest they could get it would be the end of June or July if we put it in the budget. This would give us some savings in the budget. So I would be okay with going with A.
Okay, Assemblywoman Peters and then Assemblywoman Tolles, and those will be our two final questions.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a clarifying question for Ms. Palmer. Do you need this to be just, do you need it to be accessible dollars as through IFC, or do you need this to be approved dollars that you can say it's in my budget for the next cycle?
For the record, this is Rebecca Palmer. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Peters. The answer is it needs to be approved. I need to have proof that I have approved funding so that I can apply for the full amount. This is Rebecca Palmer again. It does not need to be accessible. It needs to be approved.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
And Assemblywoman Tolles?
Thank you, Chair. So just to be clear, you will still be able to get the, Ms. Palmer, the federal grant funding. The question at hand is not, whether or not you can get the federal grant funding. The question at hand is the decision that we make today impacts your ability to get at which level of funding you get. And the difference is that if we approve this today, then in the next couple weeks, you will have, this is how much we have approved, and what you will receive is $847,000 in federal grant money. If we approve today, giving you the additional 16,000, then that puts you in the next tier where you will receive 874,000. And if we don't make that decision today, we won't be able to make that decision up in IFC in June or July, because the grant application will already be submitted based on the decision we're making today. And I see you nodding your head yes. That's correct. Okay. So then the question is, what impact does that delta between 847,000 or 874,000? So I guess that delta, that difference there is 27,000 less. What impact does that 27,000 have on your operating?
For the record, this is Rebecca Palmer. It would affect our ability to meet the other requirements of our federal grants, such as reviews of federal undertakings, reviews of national and state register programs, survey and inventory. There is a cost that comes with less available funding.
I understand that. but,
Assemblywoman, do you have another question?
sorry, my apologies, Chair.
Because at this point, I think that we're ready to move on. I'm ready to thank you. And thank you, Ms. Palmer, for being available to respond. With that, I will entertain a motion. Senator Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So based on the discussion that we just had, although one correction, even though we approved this today, that isn't the final approval because it still has to go to the full committees. But that final approval would still be before anything else that we would do. So I would recommend that we go with option A and would make a motion to approve as recommended by the governor with noted technical adjustments to replace general funds of $36,953 each year of the 21-23 biennium with federal historic preservation grant funds of $31,794 and Commission for Cultural Affairs Centers and Historic Preservation Grant program bond proceeds of $5,159 in each year.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, this is Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. I would have to vote in the negative on that motion. I believe that listening to the discussion that we've had during this meeting and hearing from the agency themselves and putting the agency and our budget in the best position for them to bring in the federal dollars, and having that approval gets them that higher dollars. So I prefer the option B, so I would have to vote against the motion.
Okay, thank you. Senator Dennis?
Sorry, Madam Chair. In all that discussion, I actually didn't do what I meant to do because I agree. I think we need to do it now, and so I want to withdraw my motion because I really meant to make the B option. I think that if we do that they'll be able to apply for it now, which is what I was trying to say, and I just in all the discussion I got confused on the motion. So anyway, so I withdraw that motion.
Okay, just for to make sure we're following the process correctly, can I have a second to rescind the motion? So we have a motion to rescind, okay, by Senator Dennis. We have a second to rescind by Assemblywoman Peters.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, because there was a first and a second already approved or already accepted, you would need both the first, who was Senator Dennis, as well as the second, who was Assemblywoman Titus, to rescind their motions.
Okay, can I have a second to rescind, Assemblywoman Titus?
No.
Take the vote. So take the vote.
So, Ms. Kaufman, you're saying that that's not rescinded then? So then we need to take a roll call vote?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay. All right, then let's take a roll call vote.
Senator Brooks,
No.
Senator Dennis,
No.
Senator Govchia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
No.
Assemblywoman Peters,
No.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
yes,
Assemblyman Watts,
No.
Chair Miller.
No. And the motion does not pass. The motion fails. Can I take another motion?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Vice Chair Monroe Moreno?
this is Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. I motion that we approve option B for decision unit E680 as recommended by the governor with the noted technical adjustments to replace general funds of $36,953 each year of the 2021-2023 biennium with the Federal Historic Preservation Fund grant funds of $31,794 and the Commission for Cultural Centers and Historic Preservation Grant Program bond proceeds of $5,159 each year, and approve additional general funds of $16,433 in FY22 and Federal Historic Preservation Grant funds of $43,627 in FY 2022 and FY 2023 with the corresponding increases to the Historic Preservation Fund grant category to align with the agency's projected federal grants in the upcoming biennium.
And do we have a second? Second by Senator Brooks. Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gopichia.
Yep.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
No.
Assemblywoman Toles,
No.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion passes. And we move on to our final items.
On page 17 of the closing packet, there are 7 other closing items, 2 of which have technical adjustments. With the noted technical adjustments, these recommendations appear reasonable. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 5 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other items 6 and 7 be closed with the noted technical adjustments. Fiscal staff requests authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Okay, and with that, I will entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what? Any questions?
Yeah. No.
Okay, no questions. Now I will entertain a motion. Senator Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that that we approve the recommendations to on the other closing items 1 through 5 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other items 6 and 7 be closed with the noted technical adjustments.
Do I have a second?
That's the motion. Yep.
Second.
Second by Assemblywoman Peters. Any further discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Gopichia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. If we could move on to our next budget closing items.
Madam Chair, I will now begin presenting the budgets which the subcommittee has not previously reviewed for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations. I will pause following my presentation of each budget to allow for questions. When I have presented the last budget in this group and questions have been addressed, the chair may wish to ask for a single motion for closing for closing consideration on all of the budgets for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing recommendations. The next budget, which begins on page 19 of the closing packet, is the account to restore the sagebrush ecosystem. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget, which supports programs to preserve, restore, and enhance sagebrush ecosystems. There are no major closing issues in this budget. There are no other closing items, and closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in the closing packet.
Members, do we have any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. We can move on to the next one.
On page 21 of the closing packet is the environmental quality improvement budget. Again, fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget. The environmental quality improvement budget holds enforcement action funds resulting from remedial settlements assessed by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources Division of Environmental Protection as a result of water controls law and air pollution law violations. There are no major closing issues in this budget. There are no other closing items, and closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in the closing packet.
Members, do we have any questions on this one? All right, not seeing any questions, we can move on to the next item.
The next budget, which begins on page 23 in the closing packet, is the Historic Preservation Comstock Historic District budget. Fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations for this budget, which encourages the preservation of the Comstock Historic District, one of the nation's largest and most significant landmarks. There are no major closing issues in this budget. There are two other closing items as shown on page 24, and closing recommendations for this budget are included on the summary page in the closing packet.
Members, do we have any questions on this item? Okay, not seeing any questions on this one, then I will entertain a motion to close all three. Senator Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to close the following budgets, that they be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. Those budgets would be 101-4156, account to restore the sagebrush ecosystem, 101-4160, environmental quality improvement, and 101-5030, historic preservation Comstock Historic District.
Okay, we have a motion by Senator Dennis. Do I have a second?
This is Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. I will second the motion.
Okay, a second by Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Dennis,
Yes.
Senator Govachia,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Titus,
Yes.
Assemblywoman Toles,
Yes.
Assemblyman Watts,
Yes.
Chair Miller.
Yes. And with that, the motion carries. So I believe that was the last budget item on our agenda. So our next item is for public comment. So broadcasting, can you please open the line for public comment? Again, just want to remind everyone that you have up to 2 minutes to make your public comment, and please make sure that you state your first and last name for the record. And broadcasting, we're ready whenever you are.
If you wish to make public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 984. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. Chair, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no callers at this time.
So there wasn't a caller on the line just now?
They were, and they dropped off as soon as I called on them.
Okay, why don't we give them just another moment to see if that was just the phone dropping off or the individual intentionally dropping off, because in the virtual world, we just want to extend a little more grace. We would know if we were physically in the same room if they walked out of the room, as opposed to, so I just want to make sure that it wasn't the phone. We all have cell phones, we know how they work. So
Certainly, you just let me know when.
okay. Do we see any other numbers, or does it seem that there's an attempt to call in right now?
Chair, the line is open and working. We have no callers on the call at this time.
Well, with that, not seeing anyone in any calls in public comment, and again, the agenda item we're on is public comment. So not seeing anyone, I will close that agenda item. So with that, that is the end of our agenda for the day. Thank you everyone so much for your hard work. Again, these conversations and decisions are not easy, and not always, you know, what we would wish them to be, but they have to be made. So I appreciate everyone's hard work and diligence and sincere concern about making sure that we're doing the best that we can for Nevada. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and everyone have a wonderful and safe weekend.